In Kashmir Shaivism, one of the core principles they refer to with the Sanskrit word pratyabhijna, which is usually translated recognition. And this is considered to be of the essence in Kashmir Shaivism, because the way they understand our situation, which I concur with, our only spiritual problem is that we don't recognize what is going on in real time, right here, right now. And the only requirement for realization, for liberation, for the solution to the spiritual problem is simply this recognition of what's actually happening here, what this actually consists of, what's actually going on. And it's not that we're not seeing it, not experiencing it completely, it's that we don't recognize it. It's as if you walk past an old friend in a crowd and you see their face, but it doesn't click who they are, and then you see them again and you think, oh, wow, I didn't recognize you. So it's not a matter of not seeing it, it's a matter of not appreciating what it is, of not noticing what it is that is actually happening here. So what is it actually, specifically, that needs to be recognized? I find the term recognition to be a little weighty and kind of have some implications, so I've sort of substituted my own word notice, or noticing, for the same principle. What is it exactly that needs to be noticed? What is it exactly that needs to be recognized? Well, what needs to be recognized is Shakti, Chit Shakti. Now this sounds very metaphysical and elaborate and religious and spiritual. It's a Sanskrit word, and it's, you have to learn Sanskrit and go to the Himalayas and study with some old Indian guy or lady for 50 years before you can be initiated enough to understand what this is we're talking about, some exalted thing. But it turns out not to be that at all. Shakti is the energy of divinity. It is the very energy that every aspect, and especially the core aspect of creation, consists of. So it is exalted, it is spiritual, it is sacred. But it is also completely accessible and completely obvious, because it's exactly what your experience is made of right here, right now, and always. And it is made of nothing but that whatsoever. So this is noticeable. Now, we're typically used to interpreting our experience as in terms of various elaborate interpretations, that we exist, and other people exist, and the environment exists, and the world exists, and all these situations exist, and they're all involved in a very complex causal interaction, and we're somewhat concerned or not with engaging in that interaction in some way that we consider will be beneficial to ourselves or to the situation or whatever. So it's this rather elaborate interpretation that we typically have of it. This is very much analogous to watching a movie. In a movie, you may be very concerned about the plot of the hero and heroine, and very concerned to be antagonistic towards the villains and the problems that they're facing, and you're really working hard to engage with this whole plot line in a way that is meaningful and that you hope comes out well. Okay? This is very much similar to the way we engage with our lives, which is why it's so easy to go to a movie and get involved, because this mode of interacting with forms is a mode that we're all very familiar with and very comfortable with, and we go to it effortlessly. But what's actually happening in a movie? Are there any people there? Are there any characters there? Are there any situations there? There are flashes of light on a screen. That is what a movie consists of. Flashes of light on a screen. And the imagination supplies all the plot, it supplies all the importance, it supplies all the emotional investment, it supplies all of the concern, it supplies all of the remembering what happened and anticipating what's going to happen and getting involved in all these plot lines and intricacy and the importance of the whole thing. And all of this is being supplied by the imagination from looking at flashes of light. Flashes of light. Now, interestingly enough, what is going on here? What is going on here? Well, we can all come up with a similar elaborate interpretations that we would in a movie. Well, we're in this building in Berkeley, and there's other people here, and we're here, perhaps because we're curious or engaged in some degree of spirituality, and we want to improve ourselves or realize something or forget something or improve something, or, all of these. Anyway, I'm sure you all could supply your own narration as to the importance of what is going on here and why you feel like you're here, and all of this is as if it would be basically the plot line of the movie that this happens to be a scene of in your life. The movie is your life, and this is a scene, and there's a plot line, there's a narration, right? We all know, we're all very familiar with this. But what is actually happening here? What is actually happening here? Well, it turns out to be not very different than a movie. It turns out to be flashes of light. Now, we can notice this, we can observe this, we can discover this very, very directly. And this is what the recognition that is so esteemed in Kashmir Shaivism refers to. This is what the noticing that I refer to is about. Noticing what is actually going on here, what it actually consists of, and that it actually consists of instantaneous flashes of light. Now, the word light is a little specific because that obviously refers to vision, and our experience consists of various other qualities as well. But if we have this technical term, Shakti, which appropriately enough refers to exactly the same thing. It refers to these flashes, and these flashes show up as light in our field of vision, show up as sound in our field of hearing, show up as thought in our field of mentation, show up as sensation in our field of touch, and smell and taste, and so on and so forth. But we can experience very directly. It's easy to say, well, yeah, flashes of light, okay, yeah, but where'd the Hillside Club go? Where'd Berkeley go? Where'd all these people sitting here go? Where'd the chair go? Where'd the floor go? Okay, let's find out. Where do they go? Okay, if you'd like to try a little experiment with me, I invite you to close your eyes and leave them closed for a little while and look at your field of vision. Look at what you are seeing in your field of vision. And you may notice various sort of shadowy shapes, sort of grayish shapes that are rather unclearly defined against a darker background, and there may be some shifting in motion. If you look a little closer, you'll notice there are countless tiny, tiny, tiny little flashes of light, little dots of light. And if you look at the sort of patterns of gray that are showing up, you'll notice, I expect, that these patterns are made up of nothing other than these little minuscule flashes of light. If you look at the dark places in between these patterns, I think you'll notice the same thing, minuscule flashes of light. Now, if you look at these flashes of light very, very closely, try to isolate one, try to find one, try to really pin one down and really see what it is, some very interesting things can be observed. You will be able to notice that you can't actually find one of these dots. You can't actually isolate it. You can't actually see one appear. You can't actually see one disappear. And yet, they're completely obvious, right? I mean, they're completely present in the field of the vision of your closed eyes. So this is a very strange state of affairs. There's all of these minuscule flashes of light, and yet you can't actually find them. You can't actually pin them down. Now, another aspect of the field of vision, if you'll look, you'll notice it seems to be taking place in a kind of a space. There is a an area, let's say, well, let's just call it a space or a field where these flashes seem to be occurring, right? And this area has no qualities of its own. It's clear, or you might say transparent or neutral, and then these flashes are the content of what is happening in this space. Okay. Leaving your eyes closed, direct your attention to your sense of sound. You may notice a little slight ringing or a buzzing in one or both of your ears. Concentrate on that and notice what is it actually made of. What as you hear this ringing or as you hear this subtle sound, what is actually presenting itself as a sound? We say it's a sound, that's fine, but if you go to it very, very closely, what is it? And if you look very closely, you may notice it consists of, again, discrete sort of flashes of sound, discrete little minuscule buzzes of sound, or we don't really have words. Flashes applies to light. We don't have a similar word for sound, but if you look closely, you'll discover the texture of it is very similar. It's discontinuous. It is discrete. It is ongoing, and consists of countless inseparable instances of sound, presences of sound. And again, if you try and find any of this presence any of these presences of sound, you can't pin them down, can you? You can't isolate it. You can't say exactly what it is. And yet, paradoxically, it's very obvious and very present. It's quite clear that the sound is presenting itself in your experience. Now, if you rub your thumb and your forefinger very lightly together with a little sort of a tickling sensation, and direct your attention to this, and what exactly is this experience made of? What exactly does it consist of? And if you look very closely with your attention, you may notice that it likewise is made up of countless little distinct instances of touch sensation, sort of sparkles of touch that appear in your experience and disappear simultaneously. And likewise, if you go look, try to pin one of them down, try to isolate it, try and hold it, try and find what it is, you won't be able to do so. Again, paradoxically, it's very present and very obvious that this sensation is occurring, and it's obvious that it has this amazing little sparkly texture to it, but as you look very, very closely, you can't actually find what it is that's presenting itself, even though it is so obviously there. It's a little more difficult, but you can try at this point going to the field of your thoughts. And as thought comes up, it may be sort of ghostly or just a sense of thought, or you may have words coming up or arguments or narrations. Again, look at what exactly is presenting itself as thought. What substance does it consist of? What sort of texture does it have? And I think you'll find, if you look closely, lo and behold, it similarly consists of a funny kind of a sparkly presence, again, of countless bits of discrete flashes of presence of thought. And likewise, if you look for them and try and find exactly what they are and pin them down, you will find it difficult to do so. So now, with your eyes closed, experience your field of vision, simultaneously your field of sound, and your finger against your thumb, the sensation, and this texture of thought, and look at what they're made of. And they are certainly different and distinguishable. We can tell sound from sight and touch from thought, and yet, remarkably, they seem to consist of a similar texture of a field of countless minute instantaneous flashes of presence that are themselves unfindable. So that ends our little experiment. So this is very interesting. So as you open your eyes and look around, notice how, as you see this room around you, if you look very closely, what you're seeing, even though there's lots of colors and brightnesses and all that presenting themselves, if you look at the texture of it, lo and behold, it consists of countless little minuscule flashes of presence, of light, doesn't it? So what you're seeing with your eyes open is essentially the same as what you see with your eyes closed, even though it may present itself in a different degree of color and detail and so on and so forth. Now, another interesting aspect about these fields of flashing presences that our experience actually consists of, if you look and notice, is they are instantaneous. They happen only in the present moment. They have no duration. There's no period of time that they actually are sticking around. It's not like these flashes sort of flash like a light bulb turning on and sit there and then they turn off. They're just, they turn on so fast that they're turning off. It happens as soon as their turning on happens, so you can't even find a turning off because it's too quick. It's too quick. And yet amazingly, all of this detail, all of this narration of our lives in Berkeley and the Bay Area and United States and geopolitics and all your friends and all your history and all the people around you and everything going on whatsoever, your body, your health, all of these things are just a narration of this field of flashes. It's like looking at the night sky and supposing you see the Big Dipper. There's no Big Dipper there, there's just flashes of light. We connect the dots and say, oh, it's the Big Dipper. So likewise, there's this incredible field of flashes and we say, oh, it's you, it's the Hillside Club, it's Berkeley, it's the floor, it's my body, it's my thought, it's the sound I'm hearing. It's a very interesting state of affairs. But I invite you to play with this. I invite you to explore it, because doing so is profound. This is a profound revelation of what we actually consist of, what reality itself actually consists of in the most fundamental way. It turns out these are not just interesting artifacts of perception. These are actually an exploration of what reality is actually made of. Reality is actually made of this mysterious energy presence in this mysterious present consciousness. Now, during this whole experiment, I directed our attention at the energy and not at consciousness, because consciousness turns out to be not particularly findable or particularly evident, whereas the energy is very obvious. However, they're one and the same thing. They never appear. Consciousness, the symptom of consciousness is the apparition of energy. The symptom of energy is it being perceived within consciousness. So we needn't bother with trying to isolate one or the other. They are two different words for the same thing. And of course those wonderful Indians, anticipating this, come up with a technical term for this, Chit Shakti, which is the magic power of consciousness, the divine power of consciousness, which is, according to Kashmir Shaivism, the only thing that's actually happening here. And by exploring these kinds of experiments, you can verify for yourself whether or not that's true. Please feel free to discuss anything you're interested in. If you're a newcomer here, we have if you want to say something, we have a microphone we ask you speak into, not because we need it because of all the huge throngs here, but because there are people online who might want to hear what you have to say as well. I trust you all noticed the chai stand we have over here. Please help yourself if you'd like.
Yeah. Someone here saying memory recall seems to join all the little dots and make pictures. Kind of in a question mark.
Yes, memory is one of the most powerful tools that consciousness brings to bear in turning this field of flashes into a narration, into events consisting of entities and situations and all these complex structures. If we had no memory, we wouldn't have an interpretation because we wouldn't know what just happened, so we wouldn't know what's happening now in any context of continuity. I know we're having a talk, but if all I had to go on was just a snapshot of one moment, I would have no idea. It would just all be all these shapes and colors, and I would have no idea what the context was supposed to be. So memory and imagination strings the dots together, so to speak. Just, to use the analogy of the Big Dipper or constellations in the sky. There's these disconnected flashes of energy, and memory and imagination are the tools that consciousness uses to generate these narrations. And again, we're all very familiar with this from going to movies. Movies consist, or how about TV? TV is a very simple one. TV, when a TV is on, there's a field of basically flashing lights that are changing color. And yet you can look at the TV and effortlessly interpret it as consisting of people, as consisting of situations, as consisting of cars driving by, as consisting of whatever the content of the program is supposed to be about. And yet there's nothing there but little flashes of light, little flashes of color. This is how effortlessly the imagination and the memory can do this. We're all very familiar with this. We all are doing it all the time. And the point is not to stop doing that. The point is not to not do this. There's no problem with having these narrations. The point is to see that we are doing it. We are imposing these narrations on something which is fundamentally other, something which is fundamentally different from these narrations. This field of instantaneous flashes, which is alone what's actually present here, is the ground phenomena, is the basis of what is actually happening in real time. And consciousness has this astounding magical power of using what we call memory, what we call imagination, to out of these dots construct complex situations, very much like it does when it watches TV. Yeah, we have up here.
Hi. What would you suggest for exploring more the aspect which you talked about at the very end about consciousness and these sparks being one and the same?
Well, yeah, again,
to one observing the other.
Yeah. Again, we have this notion that if something is being experienced, there must be something experiencing it. And we have this notion if something is experiencing, there must be something experienced. This is logical. This follows with human logic. Unfortunately, what is actually happening here is wholly illogical, and human logic does not actually apply to it. It turns out that these arguments that there is something being perceived and someone perceiving it is an abstraction arrived at after the fact of the simple fact, which is just this. This is. And we can say, how is it? Well, it's being perceived. Well, if it's being perceived, then it's being perceived, so there's an it and there's a perceiver. But that's logical. There's just, this is, and that isness is a miraculous apparition. It's beyond analysis. It's beyond conceptualization. How is the present moment being? How is this actually here? It's miraculous, right? It just is. All you can say is it is, and even that is an absurdity, because is compared to what? Is it's another abstraction, it's another silly notion. But abstractions aside, we have the reality. We have this. Whether it is or isn't, whether it's being experienced or whether there's something being experienced, is all irrelevant. Just that. And again, when we go to this nakedly and let it show us what it is, it reveals that these abstractions are unnecessary. It reveals that they're more imaginary layers and labels and interpretations that the imagination imposes on the raw phenomena, the raw fact. And the raw fact turns out to be absolutely inscrutable. It turns out to be absolutely unanalyzable. Which is, of course, not true. You can analyze it any which way you want. Look at all the philosophies of humans and religions and what have you. So there's all of these analyses piled on. Anyone can, have a go at it. And yet, does any of that change? What changed? Just this? Just this. So, this is nakedly, period. And that fact is the sole fact. That fact stands on its own. And that fact is what you are, what the world is, what reality is, what the divine is.
I think what I find difficult is not that I want to hold on to the concepts and have to analyze it. It's more that given that our minds are so used to thinking subject-object, I find that for me, the presence of that automatic thought, for lack of a better word, feels like it makes it seem like the perception or the recognition of the fact, like you said, that this is, seems divided, even though I mean, what you're saying I've heard from different people, and yet it's not fully satisfactory, not because of the words, but because of my own ability to recognize it without the filter of the existing thoughts that's there. So how does one get past that?
Okay. Well, there's lots of tricks. You can look at the filter itself. What is that? Where's that coming from? Where does it exist? Where does this urge to interpret it come from? Where does it exist? It likewise is miraculously present. And when you get down to the fact of this miraculous presence, after a while of approaching it and then backing off and approaching it and backing off, it sinks in that it is actual, it is real, and the filters are being added on.
Yeah, that's the part I'm getting to, like that final closing of that gap, or you know.
Well, you have to be with it. You have to play with it. You have to, you have to apply yourself. You have to approach this and explore it, and let it show you what it is. If you sort of insist, if you hold it as being a certain way and then sort of stay there, then that's a stasis. In that condition, there's nothing challenging in that condition. So the challenge has to come up, either arbitrarily, and again this is more spin doctrine, either arbitrarily through circumstances, through a challenge of coming to talks like this, through some kind of a revelation of an experience you'll have, accidentally or whatever. And yet all of those are just more ways of spin doctoring the mystery, because what happens and how it happens is ultimately an absolute mystery.
That I get.
Yeah.
That I get.
Okay, good.
How that comes about is totally not in my control.
Yeah, but that's great. That's all you need. Just stay with the mystery. Stay with the mystery. I mean, what is more astounding than mystery? You know, the mystery is actual. It really is mystery, and it's right here, and it's completely obvious. You know, that's a bottomless pit. That's absolutely bottomless. That's deep space.
Just the fact that it is.
The fact that it is, and that it is absolutely mystery.
Yeah, thanks.
You know, just be with it, and it will show you what it is, because it is what it is. It's not like you need to make it into something. You need to fashion it into not consciousness or not an object or it's not, you know, it is that, so just be with it and it will reveal itself.
I guess the idea or the block or the belief is that I need to get rid of some form of thinking in order to see it clearly, but what you suggest actually is very...
It's simpler than that. It doesn't matter how you think of it, because this is not a thought. Right. This is not a thought. Yeah. This is real. Yeah. This right now, this is real. Look at that reality. You know, it will humble you. It will numb you. It is completely ungraspable. Right? It is not, you can't pin it down. And it's absolutely real. Just be with that reality. And you'll be, and you can think about it any which way, and who cares? It's just silly gibberish. The mind is a crazy monkey. It'll just keep on thinking. The thinking's not a problem. Just don't expect that the mind's ever going to get it.
Right. That's exactly.
There's no right way to think of it.
Like to hear, hearing what you said, and my way of putting two and two together and everything. It's like the mind, comes up with the idea that it needs to recognize it by doing blah blah blah, whatever. So, yeah, I get what you're saying. Thank you.
I'm sorry. Let's go to the online just for a second, then we'll come back to you. Yeah.
Okay, a couple of questions. Is it a sort of requirement for there to be an apparent perceiver to see that there isn't one there?
Of course not.
Okay.
That's because that's all more abstraction. Who cares if there's a perceiver or not? Whether there's a perceiver or not, does this stop? Does this start? Whether there's a perceiver or not, does that change whether you go to sleep or wake up at night? These things all happen mysteriously. Perceiver or no perceiver, who cares? That's just a spin doctrine.
Can one ever be what one observes?
To say, can you ever be? What does it mean for you to be what one observes? What is observed is observed. You are what is observed. If you are your body, you observe your body, right? If you are your thoughts, you observe your thought. If you are your personality, you're observing your personality. If you are your experience, you're observing your experience, right? Or how would you know you're having experience if you weren't observing the fact of experiencing? So naturally, if you're anything, you are what you observe. Sorry. Can we come over here?
No follow-up.
Okay. You were saying that this is reality.
Yes.
I was with a Tibetan Rinpoche a while ago, and he was saying, he was giving us a mantra, a Tibetan mantra, and he translated it as, it's all a bunch of baloney.
Right.
And just repeat that, it's all a bunch of baloney, it's all a bunch of baloney. And I have it on the ring, it's all written in Tibetan. And I look at the ring and it reminds me it's all a bunch of baloney.
Sure.
So I was wondering how you put this is reality, and what he and other Easterners always say it's illusion or it's a dream or it's a bunch of baloney. What does that mean?
If it's illusion, it really is illusion, and that's the reality.
But it's a bunch of baloney referring to our perception and our filters and our thinking of reality? That's what's the bunch of baloney?
Sure.
So in other words, there is this, But most of us are not in contact with this. We're in contact with our imagination, our concepts of this.
Well, we are.
And that's what's a bunch of baloney.
We are in intimate contact with this. We
Oh.
just don't recognize that we're in contact with it. We don't notice that we are. We are, and it's not that we're not in contact with this.
No.
We're in contact with something else, and we need to go from something else to this. We are in contact with this. We just don't know it. We think we're in contact with something else, which is our imaginary interpretations of what we think this
Which
is.
seems real to us.
Sure.
That's the dream.
It seems
That's-
real. It seems real because it's made of reality, because all the interpretations are of reality itself. In other words, you have interpretations about your body, you have interpretations about this room, you have interpretations about this conversation as being, and what these actually are is real. This is actually happening.
Yeah.
This is happening, so
Yeah.
it's real.
Yeah.
But it's not your body. It's not a conversation. It's not a room. That's the baloney.
Like our ideas about the body, how it should be, and
All that.
that we can get some stability with this and this. All these are ideas that
Yeah.
are a bunch of baloney.
Yeah, they're ideas, and all ideas are inaccurate. Even if they're not wholly inaccurate, they're not completely accurate, which makes them effectively wholly inaccurate.
Not reality, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
sure.
Peter, I wanted to ask if the real-time experience includes belief.
What about it?
Is belief a part of that real-time experience?
Certainly, if it's happening, it's part of it. But belief isn't really belief.
What is it?
What is it? Look and see. When belief presents itself, look and see what's presenting itself. Give me an example of a belief. Anything, something you believe right here, right now.
I love chai.
Okay, good. You love chai. So, I love chai consists of 3 beliefs. I, love, and chai. Okay. You can, when you have the belief I, what are you actually referring to? What's the reality? Okay, when you wave your hand, what is that referring to?
This form.
Okay, this form. Where does that form stop?
Well, it's 5'6". It's
Is it 5'6"?
120 pounds.
Okay, if it's 5'6", what's happening at 5'7"?
5'7", there's space.
Okay, what is the space?
It's
Is
space.
it not? Is the space not I? What makes the space not I and the 5'6" I? What's the difference between them? Let me ask more specifically. Does the 5'6" show up in your experience?
Yes, it does.
Does the space show up in your experience?
Yes, it does.
Is it any more or less real, the one or the other? In other words, they're both actually
they're both
equally
they're both part
present.
of the experience.
Okay, so you can experience 5'4", say, okay, 5'6", and 5'7". 5'4" and 5'6" are different from each other, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
But they're both I.
Mm-hmm.
5'6" and 5'7" are different from each other, aren't they? But they're not both I. How do you arrive at that?
Well, I think I arrive at the I because I'm experiencing in this form.
You're experiencing in this form. No, the form is not. The form is an object of experience.
Okay.
You know you have the form because it's an object of your experience, right?
Right.
I mean, you know you have a hand because you can look at it and you can feel it.
Right.
So what's actually looking and feeling, you might say, is your consciousness. So the form is in the consciousness rather than the other way around, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is that true? I mean,
Yeah.
is that your
Yeah.
experience?
It's everything.
Okay. Well, let's. So your hand is in your consciousness, right? Now the space at 5'7", where is that?
In consciousness.
It's in consciousness too. So it's an object in consciousness. So basically, what you have is objects in consciousness,
Mm-hmm.
and they're all different from each other,
Right.
and yet they're all equally in consciousness.
Right.
So isn't it kind of arbitrary to distinguish some of them as I and some of them as not I?
I guess so.
Let's take the tip of your hair. So you pull the tip of your hair out, and it's at like 5'9" or 5'10", right? And right up there at the very tip, say you're holding a hair up, right? Is that you? Is it? Okay, so if that's you, but then you take the hair and you bend it down this way, so the hair is you, so the tip of the hair is you, but what happened to when the tip was here? Is it really that different?
No, it's not different.
So but this is I and this is not I.
Okay, so everything is I.
Might be. Or I is arbitrary designation of what?
Of this.
Yeah, I is an arbitrary designation of this. So this is I. I am that. Cool. Okay. Now chai. We could do exactly the same arguments with chai, and it'll turn out that chai is this. Okay. I can walk you through it, or we can just jump to the edge of the.
Let's jump to the edge
of the argument. So chai is this. I is this. What is love? Okay. What's love? What is love? What's your belief that love is?
Like.
Okay, like. What is that? What do you mean by like?
Delicious.
Delicious. Okay. Delicious means attraction.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Positive. Good sensation.
So how do you know this positive sensation?
It just feels good. It's a positive sensation.
Okay. So it feels good. What's that feeling good made of?
It's made of this. Everything is made of this.
So I love chai turns out to be this, doesn't it?
So what you're saying is even any kind of belief, whether it's positive or negative or whatever, it's all just this.
What else could it be? Look and see.
Well,
where would you find it? What would it be made of?
I totally agree. And the thing is that for someone like you who lives in that real-time experience and doesn't have that belief system that is really the bondage or the delusion. I mean, it's a difference.
No. It's you don't need to not have the belief system. You just need to look at what it is. You have the belief system. I love chai. I'm not arguing with that. But we just looked closely at that, and the belief I love chai is really the belief this.
Right. Okay.
So that's fine.
Okay.
So that where does that leave you? Right here.
Yeah.
So look at any other belief, any belief system you have at all, very closely like that, and you'll see that it consists of that. You don't need to not have these beliefs. You just need to see what they actually are.
Right. Okay.
It's not a matter of not having beliefs.
Yeah.
It's not a matter of not thinking. It's not a matter of not having interpretations. It's a matter of seeing what they actually are, and they are nothing other than this. They can't be. What else would they be made of? How could they appear? How could they present themselves? How could they show up in your experience if they weren't this?
Right. Well, I have this understanding that a real-time experience, there's no thought, there's no past thought, no future thought. There just is, and I think that is it a different experience than what I'm experiencing with past and future and thoughts and sensation.
No, that's a misunderstanding. Because thought isn't really thought. Past isn't really past. Future isn't really future. So when there's thoughts and past and future, there isn't really thought and past and future because there's no such thing.
Okay.
Thoughts are this, past is this, future is this. So bring them on. Thoughts, past, future, interpretations, narrations, my life, my history, my neurotic personality, this, that, and the other. They're all a field of light. You don't need to not have them. You don't need to sit there like a zombie or someone that's been lobotomized, like,
Yeah.
That's irrelevant, and that's cool too. But if you did, that would be this. But you can't get away from this. You can't add to it. You can't subtract from it. So adding thoughts, adding belief, adding interpretations is not actually adding anything. Because you're just adding more this to this. You see what I mean? And this cannot be tainted by this. This cannot be dirtied by itself. It cannot be sullied by itself. It cannot be impeded by itself. So when you add do you follow this? When you add all these thoughts, all these fantasies, you're not adding anything because they are themselves light. You're adding light to light.
So even the belief system is all this.
Yes. What else could it be? What could it be? What would it be made of? How would it be here? What would it be made of? What would be showing up? Mm-hmm. Like, okay, I'm believing something. That means something is showing up, right?
Right.
So if something is showing up, what is it made of? If it's showing up at all, it has to be made of this. It has to be made of the mystery. It has to be made of Shakti.
So there could never be, there's never more and there's never less.
There's never more, there's never less.
Okay. I'm going to leave it at that.
Never more, never less.
Thank you.
Quoth the raven, never more.
Thank you.
Exactly. And believe it or not, it's the same as what they call compassion, although they won't generally admit that.
Peter, before you were talking about how the flashes seem to be connected by memory and fantasy. That's how we connect them together. But it seems like if I'm like recalling something in memory from 500 milliseconds ago, or anticipating something that's going to happen in a half a second, those are also just flashes in the present, right? So I'm still left with something that's flashes, and they're disconnected.
Yeah.
So is it something I just don't need to understand? I mean, obviously I can cognize things and
so
tell
what
what's
specifically is it you're talking about, acting about, that you don't need to understand?
It just seems like if everything is flashes and they're disconnected, I don't see how memory or fantasy even creates an illusion of connection.
Right. How it creates it.
Yeah.
It creates it in imagination. It's miraculous. It's not something that is susceptible to analysis or logic. You know, I mean, the prime fact is that this is a miracle. This is literally a miracle. This is loaves and fishes miracle. This is walk on water miracle. This is God said, "Let there be light" miracle. Okay, so it's not like, oh, let me figure out how that works. Oh, I get it. It's completely beyond logic. It's completely beyond grasping. You know, all you can do is play catch up. You know, throwing theories at it that are more and more sophisticated and more subtle. And no matter how you do that, endlessly till the end of time, you still won't capture what it is. All we can observe is that it is like this, and it's discoverable that it is like this. And the point is not to deconstruct it or see how it works, but the point is to see that it is, and that it is all, and that it is you. Right. This miracle is you. You are it. It is the universe. It is the field of Shakti. It is the miracle of consciousness generating stories and past and present and memory and all of that stuff. It really is. And you are nothing but that. And it is nothing but you. Because there's no separation. There's no separate you with an it over here and it over here and you over here. It's just this, right? Just this. So just see that this is real. This is inconceivable, and this is you. Simple facts, very simple facts. And when you see that nakedly, it's a profound revelation, turns out. Look and see. Look and see if you can find anything else.
Yeah, I can't, really.
Yeah,
and
you can't.
I keep assuming there's other stuff, but when I look, I can't.
But keep looking and look at those assumptions. I mean, keep at it. You can't. You'll keep coming back here. In Dzogchen, they have a very, very nice image of an endless sea, and there's an arc on this endless sea, and there's a bird on the arc, and the bird flies off. No worries, it's going to come back, because there's nowhere else for it to go. It's going to land sometime. It's going to land on the damn boat, because that's where there is to land. You can't depart from this. So have at it. Just go off and go into interpretations and stories and narrations and trying to get a handle on this and that. You're going to come right back here, because this is what there is. This is where there is. You're going to be right here. You're going to land right here, right now. Because where else can you be, and when else can you be? And what else is going to be going on than this? It won't have improved. It won't have changed. I mean, it'll look completely different, of course, but it won't. But what it is will not change in the most minuscule way. It is eternally itself, and you are that. And eventually, we get it. Eventually, we go, oh, I see.
Okay, they've put it in a sort of a form of a statement, but it would seem that the more descriptive we add to reality, the less we know it.
Yeah, sure. Because what this is what it is. It is not the description of what it is. And that's true of anything, This microphone is what it is. It's not a microphone. I could write a book about microphones and a book about this microphone, and the book would not be this, would it? It would be a goddamn book. Okay? So likewise, we have all these descriptions and all these interpretations and all these thoughts and all these ideas about what this is. They aren't going to be this. They're going to be ideas and descriptions and so on and so forth. Because the idea is not the thing. The idea is not the object. If you're looking for the men's, it's out the front there, yeah.
To the left.
And yet, paradoxically, all of those ideas will be this, because again, you can't depart from this, because the ideas are made of this and are happening right here. And they're happening in experience, which is this. So paradoxically, even though the ideas in the narration will not be this and cannot capture this, at the same time, they are this. And they cannot be other than this, and they cannot detract from this in the least. So we can be completely nutters. We can just have wrong ideas about everything and be completely psychotic. And paradoxically, we're absolute reality. Reality.
So there's another difficulty here that I'd like to get help on. When you said, this is eternally what it is, and when the word this or it, or when those words are used, something in me gets it. But then when you said to that gentleman, and you are it, okay, when the word I, the identity part comes in, that's where I get very caught up. Now, I heard, you went through the I love chai thing with a lady, and I heard it, but to be honest, I can't say that I get that deeply, even though, again, it's not the first time I've heard these things. So, again, that's where the I, this is it, yes.
Right, okay.
But I am it.
Right. Well, it's a matter of...
Is it just words? Am I hung up on some words?
Yes, it's just words. We have these two words. We have a word this, and we have a word I.
Yeah.
What exactly does the word this refer to? Okay. Now, look very carefully. What exactly does the word I refer to? And where can you find it other than in this? Is there an I that's somewhere else?
No.
Okay, so if the I isn't somewhere else, then the I is at least in this. If it's in this, does this have any parts, any demarcation, any separations?
It's the habitual conditioned beliefs that is the body. Now, like I said, I heard what you said, so I know that it's not logical to think that, but I can't get past that habitual belief. And that's why when the word I is used, you know, when you ask me the question, when you say, what is this, where do I find this? It's like,
Okay.
but when if I just said, you know, when you ask, where do I find I, if I just unthinkingly answer you, I say this.
Okay, good. So I's the body. That's fine.
Yeah.
There you have your challenge. Look and see what the body is. Very simple. Look and see what the body is. You'll discover the body is an experience.
Right.
You'll discover the body is nothing whatsoever other than an experience.
Yes.
When you go to sleep, the body disappears. When you start dreaming, a new body appears. It may be very different than this body or not. Right?
Right.
And so the body is an experience. That begs the question, well, what is experience? And you begin to look at what experience is, and you will come to the fact that experience is this.
Yes.
Because when I say this, I'm referring to nothing whatsoever other than what we call experience.
Yeah. The tendency is to segment certain experiences, like sensations in the body, as I, and certain experiences as not.
But again, look at the evidence. You have to be very empirical. You have to be scientific about it. You have to try and look at what you're really referring to by these words, and look if these demarcations, if these separations are actually accurate and are sustained by the evidence, by the fact of what is actually being experienced. And you will find it's not like that. Ultimately, you will find it's not like that. Even if you have an ingrained,
that's it.
A habit of prejudice to see it a certain way.
Exactly.
If you look at it scientifically, if you look at it objectively, so to speak, empirically, I argue you will inevitably come to the fact of what this actually is, because this will reveal itself. What this is actually very obvious.
Right.
And so keep approaching it, and if you do it in a good faith effort, you will eventually discover exactly what this is, and you will discover that all of our words whatsoever, all of our ideas whatsoever, refer to nothing other than this. They have to. What else could they be referring to? This is comprehensive, it's inclusive. You can't, it's not like there's this and then there's that somewhere over there. You can't find a that. When you find a that, it's a this, isn't it?
Yes.
So there's this, and so any idea, if it refers to anything whatsoever, has to refer to this, because this is what there is. And so if you approach, even if you have prejudices and inclinations and habits of thought that argue to the contrary, if you look at it objectively, look at it impartially again and again, scientifically, you will just eventually, it'll become totally obvious to you what this is.
Yeah.
Because this is nakedly revealed. What this is obvious.
It feels to me like I do need to go through that step by step over and over again, because otherwise it's not an immediate, there isn't that immediacy in my gut, even though I've gone through that exercise and it has been clear, but it's not always immediately clear.
Yeah. Well, there's nothing stopping you. And
Okay.
also remember that this is not, experience is not intellectual. Experience is not conceptual. This is actual. This is actually happening. And you have that actuality at your disposal. And that actuality has some clout. That actuality is not rational, it's not logical, it's not semantic. And so the more you approach this, the more you will be merging in this actuality and letting it do the work, and your intellectualizations will carry less and less clout, because you'll discover that they refer to nothing other than this actuality, which is not a thought, not an idea. This is not a concept. This is real.
Yeah. Thank you.
How about your compatriot here?
Just the word "this" and "it" for me kind of has inside of it. It doesn't work for me, because if it always seems like something I'm experiencing this. I can experience this, but to me it's more like what makes more sense to me is it's just all I. Somehow I.
Words will be okay.
Somehow the word I doesn't have it as much as this. The word this somehow, for me, when somebody says it's all this, somehow something doesn't feel right about it. It's because the word this, my understanding of the word this or it,
Right.
is a object.
Right. This is an object. But it's important to investigate and discover what that means. What does it mean to be an object? What is an object? Is there anything that's not an object?
Well, I feel like, I'm just talking about my feeling that I am very homogeneous, and the I is like homogeneous with all things, so there's no real object.
If I is homogeneous with all things and there's no object, then an object refers to that homogeneity within which there is no object, because what else could it refer to?
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm just kind of saying my issue with the word this which is very subjective.
Yeah. Well, words are gibberish. Words are meaningless. Words are unimportant. Word semantics is all bullshit. Semantics is all wrong. Words refer to absolutely nothing. Words are all lies. So, I recommend, and we discover this very quickly when we observe what this is, or what I is, if you will. So, don't worry about it. Don't worry about the fact that semantics are jerking you around and pulling you this way and that, because it's all bullshit. They don't. This and that refer to the same thing. I and you refer to the same thing, it turns out. So they're synonyms. So this and I are synonyms. So arguing that they feel different is like, who cares? That's gibberish. Who cares if they feel different? Saying cat and le chat may feel different, but who gives a damn? It refers to a goddamn cat. They're the synonyms. So it doesn't matter if they feel different. That's just your crazy psychology. And that crazy psychology is also this. It's also a spontaneously occurring energy event in reality, in consciousness.
Yeah, very good point. Thank you.
Yeah. We have.
I just recently had an experience of I that was kind of interesting. I went to get my hair cut, and I sat in front of a mirror and I looked at who I was, and I saw that this that I saw in the mirror was I, and then 5 minutes later part of I was lying on the floor and being swept up and put in a bin, and there was this feeling like, wow, that's me in that bin. And it was like, it really gave me an opportunity to see that I is arbitrary. Yeah. It's like nail clippings. If I clip my nails,
sure.
Is that me?
Yeah.
It's just
exactly.
Completely
like my discussion with Susan with the hair, you pull it up. Well, if the hair is you, then you pull it up, that's you, but then you cut it off and hold it there. Is it all of a sudden not you? It turns out that it's all very arbitrary. All of this psychological, psychosemantic analysis of what's going on here is all just missing the mark. It's all just wrong. It's all just doesn't apply. We have all these words and all these ideas, and I and this and subject and object and consciousness and energy and the world and space and the universe and good and bad and Republicans and Democrats and all this. It's all gibberish. It's all just quarks flashing in infinity, Yeah.
The words seem to have a wholesome function of trying to give us a handle on reality and functioning so that we can feel sane and have a life and all that. They're meant to help us negotiate.
Yeah.
But
that really works well, doesn't it?
no, but I mean, that's the idea. They're supposed to tell you this is a cup, this is a microphone, this is Louis, this is Sally. But if you say, I am this, and Chai is this, does it follow that I am Chai?
Of course.
That's what I thought. I feel like Chai. Is it true?
Everything that you experience is your embodiment,
So I
i.e.
am
is
New
you.
York. I am New York.
Of
also.
course you are. You're everything.
That's what I thought.
Let's suppose that you discover that you're dreaming. This is not Wednesday night, and it's not satsang at the Hillside Club. You're home in bed, and you're having a dream, and you're dreaming it's Wednesday night in the satsang club, at the Hillside Club, and having satsang, right? So in that case, is the Hillside Club you? Well, it's not the Hillside Club because it's a goddamn dream. There's no club there. There's no wood there. There's no building there. There's no Berkeley. So is the Hillside Club you? Yeah. Is this microphone you? Yeah. Is the chai you? Yeah.
So you're saying it's a
Can you
bunch of
prove you're not dreaming?
No. Not really.
We can't know. But if you look at it honestly, if you look at it the way it is, it's all absolutely indeterminate. It's a field of indeterminacy, and it's all this. And you can't honestly find a you that has an edge somewhere, and a not you, and all these other things. It's just this field of weirdness. It's like a dream. It's just all this stuff. And it shows up and goes away, and the Hillside Club shows up, and then the car shows up, and the street shows up, and your bed shows up, and sleep shows up, and dreams show up, and then tomorrow shows up. Which of it? Where does you stop and it start? It's all just this field of weirdness, right? It's just this unending trip of inconceivability, and we presume to throw names on it as if they're definitive, as if they're meaningful, as if they're factual. It's like saying what's happening in a dream. Nothing's happening in a dream. There's nothing there. It's all fantasy, and yet we can say, "Oh no, I'm in a dream, and I'm walking down the street, and I'm going to this guy, and I'm going to talk to him, and blah blah blah." It's all lies. It's all inaccuracies. It's a dream. It's a flow of inconceivable energy in consciousness. This is a flow of inconceivable energy in consciousness.
I guess my question is that I've been in environments like this a lot throughout my life, and what I continuously keep coming back to is that if this is, essentially for me, this is a manifestation of the unspeakable mystery, and I absolutely agree with the fact that everything is, a language is basically the way that we mediate how we experience this, and to me, the longer I sit here, it just becomes more of an exercise in semantics and watching people start off at a certain point, get back to it, because essentially they've never even left that point. So I look at you and I go, what keeps you talking? Because for me, this just silences me completely, and it always has. And I've always been around people who just keep having the need to discuss it to death, when essentially I know they're always going to arrive at the same answer, because everything, the question, the answer, the process is just the manifestation, and should be wordless, essentially. So sure. I just get very tripped up because I kind of appreciate the dialogue, but at the same time I see the futility in it, because sure. We're just creating endless constructs as human beings, because that's all we're capable of doing. Because we started out purely experiencing this unadulterated as children, and have been basically trapped into the belief that we need to intellectualize and basically mentally masturbate endlessly to get back to who we were at 6 months or prior to that. So what keeps you talking? I'm looking at you and I'm like, what keeps you sitting here week after week? And I've only been here twice, but what keeps you sitting here and has the patience to...
Questions. If you didn't, try not asking me anything next time. Go ahead and ask me anything for an hour and a half and watch what I say.
Right. It's just fascinating. So really it's just basically a way of getting people to get to a point where they shut up and just experience it for what it is.
Yeah.
Until there are no more questions.
And then discover that, and then go past that and discover you don't need to shut up. Because
Right.
speech isn't any different than
true.
shutting up.
That's true.
And concepts and constructs aren't any different than the newborn baby.
Right.
It's all the same. You can't lose anything actual, and you can't gain anything actual. So it's play, it's freedom. All bets are off. Anything goes, anything is fine, and you're not losing anything, and you're not gaining anything, and it's all
Right,
it's all absolute delight. It's pure delight. It's pure bliss.
It is delight unless you see someone tormented within the semantics of it all, and then
Sure.
you're going like, well, where's the delight in that? Just let
Right.
go of the language, and you're there.
And then,
like-
but then maybe you can help them. Maybe not.
right,
But maybe you do. Maybe you talk to them,
right,
and maybe you can help them see, maybe or not. Who knows?
right. Okay. I mean, I'm still sitting here and listening, but yeah, thank you.
We were talking about I am. I don't know if I am. The sense of non-separation does not necessarily have to do with I or me, or,
Of course.
but without the words. It feels like something comes alive, something has such presence, and it feels like love, just being in love with, not knowing what it is or what I am. It's just everything is kind of feeling of intimacy with it.
For sure. Yeah. And yet, does it come alive, or is it always that? Is it always what it is? Is it ever not intimate? And if it was not intimate, what is the non-intimacy is appearing with absolute intimacy, isn't it? You know, the astounding thing about this is it can appear as anything. It can appear in any flavor. It can appear with any quality. It can appear with extreme apparent tension and turmoil and turbulence and discord and friction and confusion and all of these kinds of chaotic aspects, and yet what is appearing is just this, and it appears with this absolute intimacy. It appears with absolute integrity of never departing from this. You know, we don't need to qualify it. We don't need to qualify it as I or not I. You know, the word "this" is kind of nice because it's sort of impartial. You know, it doesn't really specify a whole hell of a lot. But it's just a word. Who cares about words? You know, it may as well be a fart, you know?
Yes. It even feels as if I disappears, the body, mind, or whatever, the identity disappears, and that's when everything becomes alive.
Yeah. But even if you look what appears or what disappears, if you look at what's appearing before it disappears, or what was appearing after it disappears, or what reappears, the appearance and the disappearance turn out to be this too. And it's all, again, with this absolute intimacy, absolute presence. It's always this. This cannot depart from itself. It cannot stop being this. It can't happen. It can look like anything, you know. And this is our trap. We think it's supposed to look like this and not supposed to look like that, and so we get all torqued up when it looks like that because we want it to look like this. But that and this are both this.
Yeah.
This can look like anything. It can look like anything. It can look like extreme suffering. It can look like extreme pain. It can look like extreme division, apparent division. And it will still be exactly this. And when we get that, we finally get it's not what it looks like. We have these preferences. Oh, it's supposed to look like this, not supposed to look like that. I mean, this is Buddhism 101, Four Noble Truths. The cause of suffering is attachment and aversion, and on the cessation of attachment and aversion, there's a cessation of suffering. Simple fact. When you think reality is supposed to look like this and not supposed to look like that, you're in torment, you're in hell, because reality looks like whatever it damn well wants to, and it's going to look some way you think it shouldn't before long. Fact. Because it just goes all the hell over the place. Right? And so the point to get it at is that this never departs from itself. Whatever it looks like, it is exactly this. And again, this is not dependent on the word this. I'm just referring to, and it can look like anything, and it never departs from exactly what it is. And you are that, and you cannot lose that, you cannot gain that, no matter what it looks like. It can look like anything. It's not dependent on appearances. Just like a dream. You can dream anything whatsoever, and the dreamer isn't hurt. You can have a horrific nightmare, and the dreamer's just sitting back enjoying it. You can have this wonderful dream of bliss and ecstasy and love and harmony, and the dreamer's just sitting back enjoying it. It doesn't care what it looks like. It's just digging the dream. And this is how this is. It can look like absolutely anything. And when you get that, you realize you always have it fully. You always have it. You always have 100%. This is always the finish line. This is always the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, no matter what it looks like. It's always God. Nothing but God. There's nothing present here but the divine. Simple fact. It's the only fact. And we can know this fact directly, we can see this fact directly, we can explore this fact directly just by looking at this, because when we look at this, ultimately that's what we'll find, because that's what's here. That's the only thing that's really findable. Sorry, I get a little carried away about this stuff sometimes.
Why is it that God wants more or less?
It's God's nature to explore itself, let's say. And that exploration includes, it's like the dreaming consciousness. Why does it dream dreams? Why does it dream dreams of deprivation? Why does it dream dreams of achievement and satisfaction? It enjoys exploring these aspects of itself. And it may be interesting for divinity to explore itself as a lack, to explore itself as a fullness, to explore itself as divided, to explore itself as united. But it's not the why, it's the what. See what it is that is doing all that, and you'll see that it never departs from what it is, even as it can look like anything.
So the other question I have is, what is it that I'm seeking if I think I'm trying to attain spiritual awakening, or there really is no spiritual path, or there's really no spiritual unfoldment. It's just all this. That's all there is.
Yeah. What you think you're seeking is a thought. What you're actually seeking is this. Because when you find, what you find will be this. It cannot be anything else. And this is not a thought. And here it is. It's here right now. And when you find it, when you realize it, it will not be one jot different than it is right now, right here. This is it.
Okay.
And you're capable of thinking anything you want about it. You're capable of thinking of it as being incomplete. You're capable of thinking of yourself as a separate person seeking wholeness. You're capable of thinking all those things. But if you look closely at what that thinking actually consists of and what all of this imagination consists of, you'll discover it'll lead you right back to this, because it's all this. It's all that thinking and imagining is this doing itself.
So I'm beginning to feel that I have no responsibility in all of this going on.
None whatsoever.
Okay. Good to know.
Kind of nice. Kind of a load off, eh?
Okay, I think the internet has been spiking their chai. Ask him if it's possible to see divinity after stubbing the toe, and if there is, please tell them how.
The stubbing the toe is one of the most direct ways to see divinity. You really want to see divinity, like stick a knife in your chest.
Ew.
But stubbing your toe is like the junior version of that. No, when you stub a toe, exactly what is it you experience? You experience this astounding explosion of energy and consciousness, which is exactly divinity. Divinity is exactly an astounding explosion of energy and consciousness. And that's exactly what stubbing a toe is. Look and see.
No.
Try it. I mean, this is you can play with this very simply. Just, do something that hurts a little bit like that, like hit the back of your hand hard, and experience what happens. It's like a flashbulb going off. It's like a firecracker going off. It's this explosion of presence in your consciousness, of sensation, sound, light. It's very interesting. It's a very, very interesting phenomenon. And you'll discover it's nothing other than what's happening when you don't do that. You don't need to stub your toe or stick yourself with a knife. But as a consenting adult, feel free.
So where does compassion or ecstatic compassion or peace, I mean the real experience, not just the words, peace, equanimity, sanity, real groundedness or groundlessness or whatever you want to call it.
Uh-huh.
Where does it fit into this? Most of us are conditioned minds with all kinds of values and misbeliefs and confusions. Mm-hmm. That we've collected and we live out of. But things like Buddhism and some wise people who seem to be clear say that there is a releasing that needs to happen to be in touch with this, which is something like equanimity, so you're not reactive.
No, you've got the cart before the horse. Okay. It's not that the releasing needs to happen to be in touch with this. It's that when you get in touch with this, so to speak, i.e. when you realize what this is, that automatically constitutes a releasing.
Oh, that's true.
Because you will discover that what this is in perfect equilibrium, which is equanimity.
So you don't have a separation.
What this is perfectly integral with itself, absolutely accepting of itself, absolutely open to itself. That's compassion, that's love. What this is inconceivably interrelated with itself. That's intelligence. All these qualities are discovered when we see what this is, rather than we need to discover these qualities in order to see what this is. So it's a cart before the horse. It's a much simpler task than you're suggesting. It's not like we need to battle our neurotic personalities and somehow get to equanimity and get to compassion, and then all of a sudden we can see. It's much simpler. Just see what this is, and all that bang just comes with. And seeing what this is a lot simpler than it seems. Just like the kind of experiment that I did was conducting with you all when we started this talk tonight. You can just look at what your experience actually consists of in real time. Just notice what your sensations actually are, and you'll notice that, oh wow, they're a lot simpler than I'm used to thinking they are. And in this simplicity, where is there anything other than wholeness? In this simplicity, where is there any incompleteness? In this simplicity, where is there anything lacking? In the simplicity, where is there anything that there's a you that's cut off from something else? And in the simplicity, all those qualities are revealed to be imaginary, and there's just this absolute release of all of that. You see what this is, and all these other wonderful mythic qualities and the perfections and all of that just come with. They're self-evident. They're obvious corollaries. Johanna? Oh, Johanna? Oh, did you had a hand up? Or we just... Oh. Sorry. You know, one of the really unfortunate things about human spirituality is it has evolved to seem very difficult, very complex. You know, you have to sacrifice your life and go to the Himalayas and renounce everything and spend 30 years at on your knees and dressed in ashes and so on and so forth. And it's unfortunate because it's just not true. It's just not true. All we have to do is see what this is, and it always is what it is. And there's nothing whatsoever in the way of seeing it. There's nothing blocking it. There's no wall in between that you need to dismantle. It's just notice that, wow, my experience is happening in real time. That's really interesting. What is it that's showing up in real time? Well, this amazing presence, and I can't say what it is. It spontaneously shows up. It's just here, right? So this light and all this experience is just showing. You can't stop it. It just shows up constantly in real time. And then you notice it has absolutely no duration. You know, the conditions of the present moment are completely gone and replaced. They refreshes instantaneously. And what's doing it is miraculous. It just shows up. You can't stop it. You can't start it. You can't say where it comes from. You can't say where it goes to. It all completely disappears. If it didn't disappear, where would the conditions of yesterday be stored? Where would last year be stored? I mean, the universe would just be piled high with past situations. But it's not, is it? Because all these situations completely evaporate like they never were. You know? This instant is already gone. As soon as you say it, it's already gone. As soon as you think it, it's already gone. And so just notice that this very strange state of affairs, that this constant disappearing, yet constant presence in this miraculous experiencing consciousness, you know, unimpeded, undefinable, unspecifiable, and yet susceptible of endless specification. You can talk about it and think about it and write stories about it till the cows come home. I mean, what fun, right? All you need to do is just notice that fact, and that is the very goal of spirituality. That is realization. That is the finish line. That's as good as it gets. The Dalai Lama, that's what he aspires to. It's just this, right here. Very, very simple. And we don't know that because we've built this incredible mountain in our imaginations. Oh, spirituality, maybe next lifetime I'll be worthy to even begin. You know, it's like, it's all fantasy. It's just this. It's right here already. So simple. That it? Okay, I've been given the high time. Okay, one more question from online.
All right. Is it possible that you, Peter, are speaking about mystery and also from it at one and the same time?
Yeah, of course. There's nothing else to talk about than mystery, and there's nowhere else to talk about than from it. This is what we all have always done forever, and always will do forever. So anyway, in the mystery, this is the mystery, wishing the mysterious good night.